Well, hello, I am Kevin Bowles, Head of Clinical Services and Principal Psychologist at Drake Wellbeing Hub. Welcome to our event on how to create a thriving, trusted team culture. Now, high-performing teams are vital to an organization's success, but they need trust to help them thrive. Business leaders play a vital role in the development and maintenance of a thriving, trusted culture. And this webinar aims to help you understand how to do this. Firstly, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet here today. I pay my respects to the elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. Secondly, just some housekeeping. Please make sure that you're on mute throughout. And if you have any questions, then please add them to the chat function throughout the webinar so we can respond to them at the end. Finally, I want to introduce our guest speaker, Marie-Claire Ross. So Marie-Claire is a speaker, facilitator, and mentor who works with leaders and teams to build trusted, thriving team cultures that increase engagement, team credibility, and retain great talent. Now, Marie-Claire works with companies around the world, and she's an author of Trusted to Thrive, How Leaders Create Connected and Accountable Teams and Transform Your Safety Communication. She has also been named Thinkers 360 Top 50 Business-to-Business Thought Leaders and Influencers you should work with in 2023, and also Top 50 Global Thought Leaders on Coaching 2023. So, wow, fantastic to have Marie-Claire. Welcome, and please, over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you today. And I'm really excited to share with you how well-being and trust really do intersect. And in this session, I'm going to be showing you a system that I teach people to really unpack how you as a leader or as a leader of leaders can ensure that trust and well-being is really on the front foot within your organization. And so how I like to run these sessions is I like to do a little bit of interaction because we've got this wonderful opportunity here. You're all roughly similar job titles, but you're in different industries. So I'm going to get you to do a bit of interaction using the chat box feature. So make sure your fingers are nice and limber. We're also going to do a breakout room about halfway through. And I really want you to be learning and listening to other people because you've got this opportunity to realize you're not alone and you're all going through similar things. So I will be getting you to, as much as we can in the short time we have today, share what's going on with you as well. So to get started, I'm actually going to start with getting you to answer a question. And the question is, if you could just type in the chat box, how many people are you leading in your team? And by that, I mean, for some of you who aren't leading a team, that's cool. You could even say that. But are you leading 5 people? Are you responsible for looking after other teams? How many are you leading? Okay, so we've got the numbers coming through. So we've got, quite big teams coming through. We've got Dean's got 11, Michelle 25. John, you've got 4 internally. Okay, so you guys have got lots of different sizes. Oh my gosh, Katie, 140. Well, you must have lots of direct reports there. Oh, hello, Tash, 6. Okay, so this is really cool. So we've got lots of different size teams. And of course, how big your team is really does change, how much work you have to put into trust, because the smaller the team is, the easier it is. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. And what I'll do now is I'm going to get started and we're going to just really go into some of the context, which you guys are probably quite familiar with. And that is, a couple of years ago, we had this thing called a pandemic, or we still kind of do, but we still have it now. But over 3 years ago, of course, we were all put into lockdown. And this became this amazing moment world over for us to really start thinking about what we wanted from our work and our personal lives. And it gave us a chance to really reflect. And what happened was a lot of people realized they didn't want to work in toxic workplaces anymore. And in fact, a study last year in Australia done by Gartner actually found that the top reasons for people leaving their jobs last year were their manager quality, how much they felt respected, and people management. So how we lead people is really important for their well-being. And of course, we had this thing where people started really caring about their mental health. It's surprising how a pandemic will actually do that for you, where well-being becomes really, really important. And of course, we've had these supply chain issues, we've got this war in Ukraine, and now we've got this really yucky sort of situation where we've got the cost of living pressures. Now, a study actually found that in Australia, financial wellness is it's at 22.5%, which is the lowest we have ever had it. And physical wellness isn't so good either. And what's going on is that a lot of people, and you might be included, are feeling quite fearful about their financial future because of the cost of living, which is impacting, how teams are interacting and working as well. Now, of course, we've all got this thing now called hybrid working, and a lot of you are, still working from home, which is very good for productivity. But of course, it really changes how culture is being made. So in the past, culture was very much about the physical interactions in the workplace, what you could see, how people talk to each other. And now that onus is really on the leader. If you've got a virtual team all in a hybrid manner, then people really need to feel connected to you emotionally, because that's now creating a micro team culture that then has to form part of the broader culture. So this is really why well-being is so important, and trust, because the leader has become more important in this. And what's really interesting is that there's a few studies coming out that are saying that we're really in the midst of a cultural revolution of how work gets done. We just haven't worked it out yet. And this study came out last year that I find quite interesting.
Marie-Claire, we just lost the audio there.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you now.
Sorry, I pressed mute. How do you? I was trying to put myself in a place where you could see me. So leaders are what they're actually finding now. There is actually some research, because this wasn't around before the pandemic, but they actually found that just before the pandemic, employees reported a decline of trust of 20% between employees and employers. Now, this group that reported that actually had the lowest mental health score. And then, of course, after the pandemic, or a couple of years later, what we've found is that when you have a 25% decline in commitment to employee well-being, it also leads to a decline in trust. So really, as a manager, if you're leading people, the relationships you have and how you communicate is more important than ever. And what I say in my book, Trusted to Thrive, is trust really is at the heart of successful teams. It's the beating heart, and I'll unpack that a little bit more as we go a bit further. But essentially, when you're a trusted leader, people want to work with you and your team. And I was doing a leadership offsite with a team from a big financial institution. And to be honest, I couldn't quite get what they wanted me in, because they were sort of boasting about how much trust they had in their team. And in this team, they loved the leader. Her name was Michelle, and they were all raving about her. They had come through all sorts of different departments just to work with her, because she had this reputation for being an amazing leader that people could trust. So, when you are trusted, people really want to work with you, and you can be this amazing talent magnet, and things get done. Now, this team, they were so busy because they were so good at getting stuff done. Now, what was interesting is that when they were doing a workshop with me, they realized that they did trust their teammates, but only if their teammates left them alone and didn't interfere. And so they realized they did actually have trust issues, but they were just kind of pretending they didn't exist. But what is also important is that when you are a trusted leader, you feel happy. in your job. You get up in the morning really excited about the people you're going to work with because you know you're going to innovate and solve problems together. And of course, you get better opportunities, not just job opportunities, but amazing project opportunities that just stretch you. And of course, when we are actually wanting to be a trusted leader, leadership is all about getting work done through people. And people want to know that as the leader that you'll be there for them when things get tough. And of course, that's a big thing at the moment. You also have to trust people when you can't see them. And of course, that was a really big issue when we all started working hybridly. And of course, what people want really, this is the center of it all, is they just want to be valued, appreciated, and seen. Now, when we talk about trust, it does mean different things to different people. So I do want to just give you a definition, because if I were to poll the whole room here today, you'd all come up with different ways that you trust, because it's very much an individual perspective. But the best definition that I have come up with so far is that it's the ability for everyone in an organization to confidently rely on and predict that others will do the right thing and make good on their promises. Because in a low-risk situation, trust isn't an issue. It's once you move into high risk, once you have some sort of change, once there's like a new leader, a new team, a new process, a new structure, whatever, people start to really pull back until they can sort of feel that things are safe to move forward again. And there's some really amazing research that's come out in the last couple of years about the benefits of trust. Now, this one is from ADPRI, and they actually surveyed 50,000 participants. Now, I'm an ex-market researcher, so 50,000 is very exciting. You know that these numbers are pretty robust. Now, they actually found that when you have people who trusted their teammates, team leaders, and senior leaders, those who trusted in at least two of those three categories were 3 times as likely to be fully engaged and resilient than others. But the real payoff was when people trusted in all 3 categories. They actually found that they were 15 times as likely to be fully engaged and 42 times to be highly resilient. And then if you think that's really good, then wait till you see this next study by Deloitte. They actually found that trusting employees are 260% more motivated to work, have 41% lower rates of absenteeism, and are 50% less likely to look for another job. Now, one of the interesting things in that study that Deloitte did was that they found that 1 in 4 employees don't trust their employer. Now, to be honest, I actually think that's quite low. I've seen studies that are a little bit higher, but that's pretty good. But the real issue was that the actual employer themselves actually overestimated how much their workforce trusted them by 40%. And I have to say that in my work over the years, particularly with leadership teams, that is quite a bit of a problem. But when we do have trust, you do find that it really does improve the credibility of your team. People can speak openly about issues, and it really does increase the speed and of decisions. So you get that momentum. So I want to find out from you, and you can write this in the chat box, what sort of issues have you seen in your teams when it comes to a lack of trust? Just type that in. And I'm just going to say, because there are so many people on this chat, I won't be able to talk about every single comment, but just know that you're being read by everyone else, and it's not personal if I do actually miss your comment. So what issues are you seeing in your teams when it comes to a lack of trust? I don't know if people are writing any comments. I'm not getting anything. I don't know if I've had an issue.
Chat appears to be blocked.
I'm actually getting a message it's not available.
Yeah, I can't use the chat.
Right. Ah, okay. That's a shame.
Yeah. I'll give you one off the top without the chat,
Yeah,
though,
sure.
working from home, I guess. is the biggest one for me.
Yeah, so when you say that there's a lack of trust from working from home, do you want to unpack that a little bit more? What did you mean by that? How's it playing out?
Just availability of staff and making sure that they're actually working and to their full capacity, I guess.
So the visibility piece is hard. Yeah, cool. Anything else you want to add to that?
Can I add to this or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's John here from Drake. I find that working from home, I mean, look, because we're more of a back office, I find that a lot of my staff, they're very trusting in what they do in regards to, we have a very open policy, so everyone feels free to talk. For whatever reason, my camera's not working either here, so sorry. Yeah, look, I have to say working from home has been a blessing. How I haven't seen any sick days taken. We are pretty much go. I've given my staff all the leeway they want. Sometimes they've got kids, they go out, pick up their kids, they come back and they do their work. I'm not on their back. I let them do their work. It's that trust factor. So for me, working from home has been a blessing because I feel that staff, especially the ladies in my team, they feel that, they got the wash load done, but they're doing their work. They're doing everything that I require. So I can't ask.
Yeah. Thank you. We were actually just talking about the negatives of a lack of trust. Have you ever experienced any of those?
None. Sorry. It's just you broke before, so I thought I must have missed the wording. Sorry. But yeah, no, I don't have any at all. I'm sorry.
Well, while we're on that note, does anyone else want to unmute themselves and share any negatives they've seen in their teams when there's been a lack of trust? It doesn't have to be a current team. It could be in a past workplace that you've been at.
I'd say I think you really point out the fact about the pandemic and about where we are sort of financially throughout Australia. The teams not really trusting that the business has their best their best interest at heart. So we have times where our team are coming to us and saying, hey, we need a pay raise, we need this. And it's like, well, the business can or can't afford it. Like this is what we can or can't do. And that trust that we are looking out for them is difficult to continue to hold in this climate.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Glenn. So if I were to summarize some of the negatives that I've seen over the years and with the research that I've done, when people don't trust each other, it's a lot like working through sludge because you need to have a lot of meetings to make decisions. You'll find that people will actually request more information as a way of stalling things. And there'll be a double up of resources, people block each other. And of course, thank you. Some people are actually able to communicate now with chat, yay. So, not feeling comfortable to share workloads, exactly. So, delegation becomes an issue. And so these are issues that really slow things down. Okay, so I want to just change tact a little bit here. And I want to go back in time, 50,000, 100,000 years ago, when humans roamed the African savannah. Now, back then, life was pretty tough. You didn't know if you were going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or bitten by a snake. And so as human beings, we learned that if we wanted to trust each other, we had to trust that people would look out for us, and they had to trust that we would look out for them. And so as human beings, we are actually biologically designed to want to be with other people. In fact, when we fear or go into worry that we're going to get kicked out of our team, we actually go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And you can see this. We work on the wrong tasks. We don't know what to do. We just freeze, or we work on things that aren't that important. And you probably see that in yourself and with your team members. And what's actually happening here is this. We're actually operating from our limbic brain, and our limbic brain is like the size of our fist. And this limbic brain is our old survival brain, and it was designed to keep us safe on the African savannah. And so it stores our habits and our routine. So when we get up in the morning, we don't have to think about what to wear or how to brush our teeth. We do all those things automatically, freeing us up to do other more important things. But the real interesting thing about this part of the brain is that it actually processes our emotions, such as trust and loyalty. But the real kicker is it has no capacity for language. So when we trust someone, it's not based on what they say, it's based on how they make us feel. And so as a leader, you can't actually talk your way into trust. You actually have to behave your way into it. Now, I don't know about you, but if I meet someone, that I haven't really known before, and they tell me really quickly, oh, you could trust me on this, sometimes that can make me feel a little bit sick. And that's just because that's how brain is working, because we want to see that consistency over time, that people are doing what they say they're going to do. And of course, you all know about employee engagement survey results, and you'll often find that employees will complain that their leaders aren't walking the talk, because we need to see that. We want to see evidence that people are, behaving predictably. And this part of the brain, it doesn't like change. It's just designed to keep us safe. And so when we're operating from this part of the brain, it's based on a very limited perspective of what's available to us. And what we really want to do is get into a better functioning part of the brain, and that's the prefrontal cortex. Now, this is our newer brain. It's actually where we can work out that beautiful new vision and work out the steps to get there. And it's one where we can actually work out how to do that. So all the steps to get to that beautiful vision. And it's where we're more expansive in our thinking and more positive, and we're not actually coming from fear. And so as a leader, we really want to help ourselves and our team get into what I call the achievement zone. And we do this through really communicating to our team, not just verbally, but non-verbally, because that's really important for people to trust the situation, because we want to communicate to that limbic brain. So we want to make sure that our facial expressions, our tone, things that we're doing are actually matching up with what we're saying, because, people really want to feel that they can trust you. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unpack for you a system to do that, because I want to help you understand how to create an environment that's one of reward for your people rather than one that might unexpectedly contain risk. And there are 3 pillars that I'm actually going to share with you. So the first one is to do with fostering safety. Now, I'm sure you're all very aware with psychological safety and how it is the ability to take risks and be yourself and know that you're not going to get into trouble. Of course, it also means physical safety as well, and knowing that you're not going to get physically injured in the workplace. And you've probably, I don't know if you've heard of this study, but a few years ago, Google did a massive study called Project Aristotle, where they looked at 50 years of academic research, 250 variables, and they initially thought that what made a high-performing team was you have some amazing PhDs and some brilliant engineers and some extroverts, and you throw them all in together, and voila, you have a high-performing team. But what they found was that's incorrect. It doesn't matter who is on the team. What matters is how they actually interact with each other. And it's all driven by a leader who knows how to create psychological safety and create trust. And in fact, Dr. Amy Edmondson, who coined the term psychological safety, she actually found that when you looked at a high-performing team on paper, they look pretty crap compared to a low-performing team, because a high-performing team actually comes in and wants to discuss all these errors and problems, whereas a low-performing team doesn't want to talk about them. And of course, what's happening when you have psychological safety is that people have that candor in their workplace where they feel able to really talk about the things that are going on, and they can also be challenged with, any sort of performance issues as well. And so when we actually feel safe, it really does light up the reward network in the brain. But when we actually feel unsafe, it creates pain in our bodies, and that actually creates more pain according to research than physical pain. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever been emotionally hurt in the workplace, it can take decades to get over. Well, that's just me, but it has happened. So when team leaders unintentionally create a lack of safety, what I find is common is that they're just not spending the time to build relationships. They're avoiding those really important performance conversations, and they're not communicating their expectations clearly or even the context of work. And also, they can often be unaware of their reactions or their beliefs that can actually reduce safety. Now, the second pillar that I want to unpack for you is creating connection. Now, you're probably all figuring out that creating connection is about, creating that sense of belonging. And that is part of it, and that is very important. So a study by BetterUp found that when you have that sense of belonging, when people feel connected to each other, you get a 56% increase in job performance, a 50% reduction in turnover risk, and you also get a 75% decrease in sick days. But what I found in my research and work within organizations is that connection is actually a little bit bigger than that. And as a leader, you really want to help people feel connected to the organization in terms of the work and the value that they do. And so your role is really kind of helping people understand the big jigsaw puzzle, the big vision, and how the pieces and parts fit together. And by pieces and parts, I mean the projects, the priorities, the people, the platforms, and how all that's linked together. Because as human beings, we actually really need to know what's in it for me. And so you've got to align people's self-interest to the broader interest of the organization. And one of the things I talk about in my book is really aligning people to, how it helps you, the work that they do, how the work helps them, how the work helps internal customers and external customers. And that's really important in reducing silos. And of course, meaningfulness is really key to this, because we derive so much more satisfaction in our work when we can see the meaning and the value that we bring. So this study done by the Energy Project found that those that derived meaning from their work are 3 times more likely to stay at their organization. They're 1.7 times more satisfied in their job, and they're 1.4 times more engaged in their work. But what I often find is that a lot of leaders don't quite know that they can actually help people understand the meaning of their work. But doing that is this really underutilized leadership tool. And it's really about going from task-focused to meaning-focused, which is becoming more important when we're living in a workplace that's virtual. Because, task-focused is really the old way of work, and everything's really changing, particularly with AI. And then the third pillar is stepping into a meaningful future. Now, a couple of years ago, my father-in-law passed away. And my father-in-law, Graham, was actually a dairy farmer, and he worked really, really hard his whole life. And he, would obviously work from, really early in the morning to late at night his whole life. And the only way for him to actually get holidays was he would just get really sick every few years and end up in hospital. Now, towards the end of his life, probably a couple of years before he passed away, he got really depressed, and he was in hospital, and he said to his wife, Margaret, he said, I just don't see I've got a future anymore. And she explained to him, all the things he was able to do and all this stuff he could still, accomplish in his life, which was important to him. But fast forward a couple of years after that, and he was struggling with dementia. He had a hip operation that, was really taxing on his body. And he was in and out of consciousness one night, on his last night, on morphine. It was during COVID lockdown, so we couldn't even visit him. And he woke up and he was really lucid, which was quite amazing, because up until that point, he hadn't really been making sense for about a year. And he said to Margaret, I can't see my future. I can't see my future. And she said, it's okay, Graham. Don't worry about it. Everything's okay. Everything's taken care of. You don't have to worry anymore. And it was just like that. He was able to finally let go of all the pain that he was in. And half an hour later, he passed on. And the thing is, as human beings, we actually need to trust that we have some sort of future that we're working towards. And as leaders, we really want to believe that the future is going to be better than our past, and that we actually have a plan to get there. Your people want to know that things are going to be okay. Now, of course, it's hard to do that when things are uncertain, but you can actually create a perception of certainty. Now, when I do work with mid-sized organizations, they're usually quite not so good at having a vision. The CEO might avoid writing something down. And what you'll find is that people are gossiping, they don't know what to do, they start working on the wrong things, they're really in that limbic brain, really panicked. And so having some sort of vision that you can really help people work towards is so calming and really creates that certainty that people really crave. And this is really about, if you want to make sure that with your vision that it's not abstract and it has some sort of comparison. And if you take the example of, being at a shopping centre now, if say Southland, and you wanted to go to the shop Mimco. And so you type Mimco into the, those little boards, to help give you directions. And it will say, you are here, and this is where you need to go. And you can see the little animation, and it makes sense. And as employees, what they need to know is, well, this is where you are, this is what's not working, and this is where we need to go, and here's why. And that's very calming when people understand that. So you can kind of guess that, when it comes to these 3 pillars, you've got safety here and connection here. And you can understand that they're interrelated. You're not going to feel safe in your team if you don't feel connected, and vice versa. And then at the same time, if you're going to feel safe and connected, you've got to feel that there's some sort of future, that the future that you're working towards is actually going to be worth all the effort. And you can just sort of feel how that all works together. So if I were to draw that out into a model for you, this is what it would actually look like. And you can see here that we have all these questions around the 3 pillars, because our brains are actually scanning the environment all the time to make sure that we're safe. It's asking questions like, is it safe to be myself? Can I wear this unusual outfit today, or will people make fun of me? Do I belong here? Am I valued for the work that I'm doing? Am I enjoying the work that I'm doing? Do I like these people? What's my future with these people? Do I trust the future of the organization? Are senior leaders making decisions that are in the organization's best interests? Do I have a future in terms of career opportunities? Am I learning new stuff? Have I got career development opportunities? And can I trust these people to look out for me? And, at the heart of that is that beating heart of the team. Because when we have those 3 pillars, when we're communicating that through verbal and non-verbal communication, people really do feel that they can trust the situation. And we do that in our interactions. So if you look at the interaction between safety and connection, we have meetings and one-on-ones. So that time is really important with how we build trust with the people in our teams. And then we have connection and future visibility is really important, as I touched on before. So visibility, I break down in quite a number of ways, but it's, visibility of goals, what people are working on, how decisions are being made, how resources are being shared. That's really important for people to know, having that transparency. And then there's future and safety. The intersection is accountability. Now, one of the models I share in my book really unpacks the importance of accountability and psychological safety and how they collide to create high performance. So, you can see this model as, you're really being a space captain. So if you imagine a spaceship, and you've got your astronauts and you're off in space, and you need your astronauts to do an experiment outside of the ship. To do that safely, they need to be tethered. So off they go, they're tethered, and they know that they are tethered. That creates that sort of sense of, oh, I'm okay. People still want me in the team, and they can go out. They're not going to float away. They've still got a future. They're safe. They're connected, and you can talk to them through TalkBack. And they've got that opportunity to really explore and have the autonomy to do the work that needs to be done, knowing that they're fully connected to the team. And that's what we all want as human beings. We want to be valued and appreciated and seen. And this is really your role as a leader. So with that in mind, we're going to now break into breakout rooms. And what I want you to focus on is this model. And you might want to just keep a note of this. What I want you to do is just discuss, and you're going to have 6 minutes, so you're going to have 2 minutes each to talk, so make sure you give everyone a chance to talk. Of those 3 pillars, which do you feel you need to do more to communicate to your team? Is it, maybe safety is the area, or is it connection, or is it future, or is it more than one? Is there one that you're favouring more than another? So you'll get a little note on your screen round about now, inviting you into a breakout room. So I encourage you to have a chat about that, and then we will unpack that in about 6 minutes.
Sorry. I don't think the breakout rooms worked. I can't see anything here.
We're
Kevin,
working on that. Yeah, we're
being worked on.
allocating people per room, so we're just work in progress. Everyone will receive an invite soon.
Well, while that's happening, if you want to just write in chat, which one do you actually feel you need to communicate more to your team? Is it, safety something you should be working on, or connection, or future? Glenn, thank you. You feel connection. For myself, yeah. These might also be what you need as well. Ryan, future connection and safety. Yeah, safety is an issue. Connection and future. Oh wow, you guys are quite doing quite a lot of variety. I usually find that there's usually a trend. Oh no, here we go. The trend's coming through. I should have pulled it. Future. So interestingly, I have found that during COVID, when we were in lockdown, connection became the big thing. Of course, before that it had been safety, and then now I've been finding that moving into that meaningful future has been the big one since we've started having the cost of living crisis. Ainsley, it sometimes feels that safety and connection are inseparable. Yes, these are very interrelated. Sometimes it's actually hard to actually break them all apart, but it's sometimes interesting sort of bringing them together and breaking them apart, and looking at the different ways that they can be done. Okay, well, it looks like it might be having a few technical issues with the breakout rooms. What I'll do is we can just, if somebody just wants to share, I'm interested, with that model that I've got, and I'll go back to it so you can have a look. Which do you feel is most important to you at this particular time, and why? If anyone would like to unmute themselves and share. So the question was, which of these 3 pillars do you feel that you need at this time? Is it safety? Is it connection? Is it future? Or is it more than one? Who would like to share with everyone?
Hi, I'll share. I think
Thanks, Antoinette.
Future is something that I think, and accountability, just connecting
Oh, sorry,
myself. Alenta.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
I just think that, yeah, accountability for myself and my staff, just to, to have those difficult conversations. But I think also future, we're growing quite rapidly, and just not knowing that path isn't quite clear on we're growing so fast, and just making sure that we have contingencies in plans, that our staff aren't overworked, and that we just have a clear direction, I think.
Yeah, and it can be really hard when you're growing, because, you know, the future, you don't know, you're just playing with it and just really having fun. It can be a really exciting time, but, you know, it can create a lot of uncertainty for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Oh, well, that's good to know that your future is more about that you've got so many opportunities.
Yeah, just making sure that no one's
positive
overworked.
things. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Melinda. Who else would like to share? Oh, actually, what I'll do is...
I think
yes.
we kind of unmuted at the same time. I would say probably that future, not that we're growing really fast at the moment, but we need to. So more sort of like planning and discussion around how we, you know, can create that future together would be really important for our team.
Yeah. And what sort of size company are you?
With the casuals, about 35, but we're around 20 full-time equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you finding that without that sort of future that you're heading towards, people are feeling a little bit uncertain and
I think that we've had
confused?
such a change of the team. We've had people leave, so we've got new ones on board. So I think that again, it's around that unity for them to all know the direction that we're headed.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. Who else would like to share?
Ainsley, if we can just share an experience, not necessarily as a leader, but recently observing an organizational restructure. It seemed to me that without the safety and the connectedness in place, the future was distant for people to reach and have a handle on, because the connectedness became so, safety and connectedness became so important at that time. So, for example, division could easily arise amongst staff if leadership was not reassuring that we were all in it together, that everyone's in it together, exploring what the different problems were through connected communication, validating, and just making sure that there's that cohesion in the team. Yeah. It seemed like the future was, you know, not impossible, but just a lot more, there was a lot less enthusiasm about the future because of question marks over what was going on, and morale was affected and motivation. And so it seems they're so important to contribute to that futuristic thinking.
And it's interesting you should say that, because these three pillars that I'm sharing with you are actually from neuroscience, and these are the three things that we need to trust the situation. So leaders, you can't really just focus on one and ignore both. You've really got to work on all three. And it takes a certain amount of skill to be really, you know, being present and aware that these three things are what people need. I find that a lot of leaders often intuitively bring all three together. I know that, you know, with my coaching, you know, getting leaders to actually bring all those three together is really important and a bit of a game changer. So, you know, having that understanding can be really helpful. But I love, Ainsley, that story that you brought together that really nicely encapsulates it. Thank you so much. Cool. Who else would like to share any experiences or comments about those three pillars? It doesn't look like we're going to be going into breakout rooms today, thanks to some technical issues. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just go through the comments that have come through. Hello, Tash. So Tash says, we're going through a restructure top to bottom and waiting for new leaders to be in place and for the corporate plan to be released. As a middle manager, it's very hard to give future without direction from the top. Yeah. And sometimes it's just putting a post in the ground and just sticking with something and just hoping that that's a really good strategy to go with until you're told otherwise. Now, Nidhi, you mentioned that creating connection is important as it's about collaborating with the team members to achieve a certain goal. Yeah, that's very true. And Namita, connection leads to safety within teams, and a connected team can also collaborate towards a positive future. Oh, I like how you've brought all three of those together and talk about that at a deeper level. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is I'm just going to give you some actions to help you actually move forward with this. So I'll just take myself off. And the first one that I wanted to share with you, to really be able to do this model really requires being self-aware and knowing yourself. Because even though we often think leaders are born leaders, the research shows that leadership isn't always innate, and it is something that we have to keep working on. Even though some people are often born with what looks like a leadership ability, they still have to work on it. And self-awareness is really key. Now, what I love about self-awareness is that there are two sides to it. It's really about our internal self-awareness, so our strengths, knowing our strengths and weaknesses, and also our external self-awareness, so knowing how other people see that. And so being really self-aware is really important to our leaders, and there's some amazing research that shows that this really is pretty much the #1 skill of high-achieving leaders. But unfortunately, most people aren't self-aware, but they think that they are. So there was a study done by Dr. Tasha Eurich, and she actually found that self-aware leaders are actually only about 5 to 5%, so that the number is actually quite low. But when we are self-aware, it really does improve our empathy because we're more understanding of ourselves and other people. Now, to actually improve your self-awareness isn't something that you can do overnight. It does take time. And there are certain things that you can do. So, for example, there are some wonderful personality assessments that you can use to do that. And this really has a really great ability to really help you understand your strengths and weaknesses. And just a little bit later, I'm going to share a really wonderful one with you that you can actually use. But it's not just improving our self-awareness that's important. It's also really about asking for feedback, because of course when we ask people about how we're going and get that feedback, it really provides us with that external self-awareness, building that bridge and reducing that gap between how we see ourselves and how other people see us. And it's hard because as leaders, it's hard when we, as human beings, it's hard to get any sort of negative feedback. Sorry. And so, as leaders, people really need to see that we can accept feedback, because if we're not very good at receiving feedback, then people are less likely to trust us. And, because people are modeling our behaviors, they're less likely to even listen to the feedback that we give them. So it's really important that we develop that tendency to actually seek actual feedback. And then the third action. Now, this action I actually found by accident when I was doing research. And when I say found by accident, what I found was that I was looking at high-performing leaders and what they were doing. And I was really quite surprised at how they all had this tendency on a weekly basis to really self-reflect on their own behaviors, and that they weren't just sort of doing it like on a ad hoc basis. They actually had a process that they used, and they would write themselves notes, and they would really assess where they were and where they wanted to be. And I even found a couple of them were actually using one of my models, which I'd put up on LinkedIn, and I was quite shocked. And so it's really about, really spending the time and looking at your behaviors on a weekly basis. Now, what I found with many of these leaders, they did it on a Sunday night, Monday morning, but they really looked at how they were behaving, not just what results they were achieving, which is what we normally tend to do, but actually measuring how they are changing their results. And I'm also going to give you something to help you with that a little bit later. But you know, with these 3 actions, what they really do is that they help us really build empathy and really model the right behaviours that we want from our team. You know, if we want our people to improve their performance, then we've got to show that we're willing to do that as well. And really, to sum all this up, I really strongly believe that leadership is a gift. Because you know, as human beings, when we don't feel valued or appreciated or seen, it really impacts our lives, both work and personal. And, you know, in the days, particularly when we all worked in workplaces, you know, when you have a bad day, you know, a lot of those people, they go home, they get in their car, they have road rage, they kick the dog, they're unhappy with their family. But as a leader, you have this amazing opportunity to actually create this environment where people feel good about themselves. And if you think about that, you know, when people feel good about themselves, then they're likely to be happier, they're likely to treat their family and friends better. And it has this amazing flow-on effect throughout society. And so this is really about just reflecting on, you know, how can I make my direct reports feel safer, more accountable, more connected to that exciting future that we're all working towards. And being able to do this are really some of the ways to really build strong trust in your teams and organisation. So to help you with this, I've got a couple of free things I want to share with you, and I'm really excited about this one. Drake has offered all of you that are here today the ability to get access to their free P3 psychometric tool. Now, I love this tool. When I used it a few years ago, I was actually shocked to discover I'm an extrovert. I didn't know that I was. But this tool's really good because it really shows you how you communicate in the workplace, what you need to, how to improve that, or your strengths and your weaknesses, all that sort of stuff. And you see things in a different light to other tools in the workplace. So I highly recommend you grab this special offer, which is valued at $300, which is complimentary. And thank you, Kevin, for putting a link in the chat for that, because it's a fantastic thing to be able to do, and you'll learn so much about yourself. And let's face it, you can never learn enough about yourself. And it's always nice to read things about yourself as well. So that's a wonderful offer that I can help, that I hope you take up on. And then in addition, I wanted to offer you something as well. So I have developed a leadership reflection tool based on the research I did and based on that model. And if you want to get a copy of that, all you have to do is just text me your first name, last name, and email address. You'll also get a chapter of the first free chapter of my book, and you'll also be subscribed to Leadership Tips, which you can unsubscribe out of if you want to at any time. But if you want that, this is different to the P3 psychometric tool. If you want the leadership reflection tool, feel free to just text me your first name, last name, and email address to 0438 986 630. So some wonderful things to help you on your leadership journey. So we're just about at time. So Kevin, that's it from me. So I'm ready for you to ask any questions.
Well, terrific. Thank you so much, Marie-Claire, for an insightful and informative session on building thriving, trusted work cultures. I particularly enjoy the research that indicates that only 1 in 4 employees don't trust their employer, which is interesting, and the great importance of self-awareness, that reflection, and doing it on a regular basis, not only to look at performance, but you know, the things that we can do to build trust in our team. So I'm taking a lot away from today, and I appreciate all the insights that we've been given. I want to just open up to the audience, all the attendees that are currently here, for any questions, and do feel free to take yourself off mute and ask a question, or just throw it into the chat and I'll read it out to Marie-Claire.
Can I ask a question, please? I was fascinated by the leadership ability not being innate. Is there any more that you could say about that, please?
Oh gosh, there is some research behind that, and I can't remember the studies that I found that in. There is a study that did find about 5 to 10% of people do have innate leadership abilities, but they have to work it. It's not something that you can just rely on. So, you know, you get a lot of value through actually doing a leadership course and learning more about it. So we can't just rely on innate abilities. It's like, you know, a footballer, you know, or anyone good at sport. Just because you've got some natural talent doesn't mean you can just go, oh, I'm an amazing sport person. You actually have to keep working at it and building that muscle. So it's along those lines.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Pleasure.
There's Marie-Claire, there's a question in the chat from Ryan here. Is there a minimum and maximum time frame between self-reflections?
Oh, that's a good question. It's really what feels good to you and how much time. So, because, you know, I do this myself. And when I coach people, I do it as well. So it depends on how much time you have. So, you know, you can just do 5 minutes. You might want to do 15. Sometimes you might want to do half an hour. So it's something that you want to play around with. And even doing that, you'll learn a lot about yourself as well. But that's a really good question. Thank you.
All right. Well, it looks like there's no further questions in the chat. No one's spoken up to ask any more. Look, I might actually close the session. And Marie-Claire, thank you so much once again, and also to everyone who attended this amazing and insightful session. It has been absolutely valuable, and I hope that everyone is taking away something from this session. I certainly am. So that concludes our session. Thank you so much, and good afternoon.